by myself and
Ah,
talking. So a big signature part of this these talks now have become me making sure that we're both on screen. So it gives
that
us kind of a realistic feel to it. I feel, or I don't know. It's
music in the background, is that too live, or do I need to bring that down a little bit?
no, that's good. That's good. All right, man, we're good. Go.
Yo, Moman, this is Johnson Puller. What new can a poor black boy say about Papa Scratch Legba, trickster, changeling, Johnson Puller, crooked lawyer from across the road, young, old, it's time, got them deals, try and get on, holla at a nigga, sign right here.
Hell yeah.
We do more money. Wall Street musicians summon, pluck from thin air, hoard like heaven, keep tucked away like big dick. In case of emergency, raise rates, price just went up. Poor Jorge, poor Gemma, broke Betty, all dance like minstrels for dollar dollar, shake junk for trickle down, break down and pull coal from earth belly like plasma from vein, profane bodies and fight like cocks in an octagon, cogs barter, beg and borrow from bankers busy, beginning a new round of abracadabra.
All right. So for our audience, just now joining us, we're joined today by Amoja, Sumler, who is a poet, an essayist, a podcast producer, and host, known throughout throughout the country, really, but really known, really makes his home in what would you say, in the South, in the Mid Atlantic, or what would you?
Yeah, I would say I came up in the South for sure, you know what I'm saying? But man, I've been on the East Coast for half a decade now, you know what I'm saying? Living in the land of ultimate corruption, the District fucking 19, dead in the heart of all of the things. DC.
DC is a trip. I mean, like it really it's. I mean, you know, kind of, from outside perspective, the demographics, like, it's a majority black city if you get into the real DC, but then when you go into Georgetown or that, it's just like all the power and just it gets real white real fast
Yeah,
and
man.
and not
Irony is
white.
Georgetown is one of the original definitions of what gentrification was. Georgetown was the slave quarters back in the day. That's where all of the enslaved black people, that was the part of DC we were supposed to be in.
So, what time do you think Georgetown started getting gentrified?
Oh man, it would have been hundreds of years ago. I mean, this would have been literally, it's like Stula, how the black people get moved out of the bottom, and they get sent to the top of the mountain. It was that kind of thing, man. Georgetown has probably been the way we imagine Georgetown for probably the last 200 years or so. Like very early on in the 1800s, the kind of black people were like moved out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a trip though. Like looking at yeah, I mean, just being out there is a trip. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's the history, the legacy of all that is horrific in this country is really readily apparent out there, and it's also pretty much ongoing. So it's
Man. And it's fascinating, bro, because like DC is such an easy town to get around in. Whether you're talking about, mass transit, whether you're talking about rent cars, that you just go and get smart cars, and with your smartphone you can do it, right, bruh? Buses, trams, but getting to Georgetown, you have to have a car. Like that's the only part of the city, literally. Like when you talk about isolating from within a town, that in everything says DC, man. Georgetown.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Damn. So talk about coming up in the South though. You talk about that's kind of where you made your legend, where you made your name. Um, you know, always still like the history of Southern Fried is always quick on
No
almost
doubt.
everything. So tell our audience, those who might know, because we got some overlap, but a lot of people in my
Yeah.
don't really know that much about slam. So talk about Southern Fried.
All right, so yeah, so it's like the thing about coming up in the South, which is fascinating to me. The South is a place I always have a lot of love for and a lot of hate for. I think in a sentence, I normally say it's a beautiful place filled with very ugly people. You know what I'm saying? Because it's such a proud culture. But sometimes, like if you don't have nothing in your past to be proud of, all that's left is the pride. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's a great example of like the Confederate, flag type situation. It's like your family didn't come out to be that much, but back in the day there was valor and there was this romantic thing, and so like that kind of stuff poisons it. But like also, Southern culture is so deeply personal. Like even violence is personal, whereas like if you're out in the big city and something bad pop off, it's probably someone you didn't know. Whereas in the South, when violence happens, it's almost always someone you did, which goes back to that big pride culture. Because 150 years ago in the South, bruh, motherfuckers talk wild. You put your backs to each other. You took 12 steps. You turned and you fucking fired. Like that kind of culture, it moves very slowly. Dual culture is still, and I think all of that stuff resonates when you look at like why, like even gang culture was so why this shit just took. Cause it was all that blood crip shit started off, where you at, man, on the West Coast, but like yo down south, man, they are super serious about it. You know what I'm saying? Because it tied right into the overlay of Southern honor culture. Where if you insult me, you get popped, and that's kind of what I came up in. Like when I was growing up in Little Rock, you know what I'm saying? It was straight up the banging in the rock era. I had homies that shot people on that fucking, on that HBO special. And like that's the world I came from. It's like even as a person that like took to words early and like was like a poet, you know what I'm saying? I was really a street poet at the first. Like I would be up at the open mics, you know what I'm saying, with very hip hop infused, very black arts kind of movement styles. Grew up reading people like Nikki Giovanni, and you looking at stuff where like literally, you got homies that are cripping, you got homies that are bloody, you got homies that are going to the pen that will never see the light of day again. And it's like, how do you express that, right? How do you express that in a culture where, like, in Little Rock, if we take DC demographics, we're still talking about more than 51% black, even if at one time it was like 66% black, like Baltimore, right? In a place like Little Rock is 30% black. So, like, I'm this intellectual and I'm expected to be able to go into white spaces and make people feel very safe in that kind of way, but also understanding I'm coming from a fucking background where, like, honor culture is so prevalent. Like, that polite culture bullshit is just complete. So, like, that was always where my kind of poetry came from. We had to build this shit from the ground up because I think about like DC, right? Where you got a place like busboys and poets, you fall through the city, it's poetry happening every day of the week somewhere. In Little Rock, Arkansas, it was also segmented. Like you would have your kind of like academic kind of white poetry settings, and you had your open mic type places that came later on where it was all like kind of Love Jonesy poetry, and then you had cats like me that were kind of like poetry athletes. Like if you think about like what slam is, we're like athletes. Like we create poems to be able to go into any kind of scenario in front of a non nuanced audience that's maybe not even people that necessarily read books of poetry, and to be able to tell them stories that reach to them on a level, whereas a person that was just there to have a meal, you know what I'm saying? Because you know how slam is, man. Wherever we can be, like it's rare that you're in dedicated spaces, and in places like Little Rock, it never was, man. So like when you talk about Southern Fried, that was a thing where like all of the poets could come together because we all coming from these very small Southern traditions. Of course, there's some big cities down the south like Atlanta and like New Orleans and all of the stuff that pops off in Florida. But by and large, all of the people that were there, all of the poets that were there, could tell similar stories because we were the kind of people that had to go out literally in the streets and do poems to regular people just to let them know is it even a thing called fucking slam? You know what I'm saying? And just hitting them with that stuff.
Yeah.
So
So I'm kind of there's a number of directions we could go next. I'm really curious about this. But this is a question I have to answer for my own curiosity here because coming from Los Angeles, coming from the West Coast, coming from where I'm from, right, coming from the different part of the country. is the parameters of the South have always been curious to me. Like where does the South begin and end? Because like when
All
okay,
right,
I,
so
I was
asking you, right? Look,
I was driving. Well, we just did with it. I was driving to St. Louis, and
yeah,
I just little like a innocent thought occurred to me. Like, am I in the South or the Midwest? And I
no,
asked,
in
and
the Midwest.
I asked the gas station attendant like it was an innocent question, and this guy's face lit up. He was so mad. He knew his answer, but
Yo,
but asking is St. Louis and the Midwest or South is actually a very contentious question. I
oh,
just
absolutely,
and I should have
absolutely.
remembered given history, but I just didn't, like so okay.
Right.
So,
In my opinion, right? If I'm
yeah,
taking look, I think it was once said the whole damn world is country. If you're not in the city, you in the country. That's a fact. Unless it's like a suburb type situation. But country does not equal the South. You know what I'm saying? Even though mad parts of the South are fucking country, you know what I'm saying? And in the
yeah,
South, you are way more probable to have like homies that are in the country and shit.
yeah.
Not all of the South is country, and so people make that mistake. Like you get outside of South, St. Louis, you see all the corn farms and shit. You're like, oh shit, I'm in the South. You know what I'm saying? It really is not. For me, I would say the South goes at the top, Virginia to Tennessee to Arkansas to Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? And then, well, no, and then Texas. But see, Texas gets to be so everything under Virginia is the South. Kentucky is not the South. Kentucky is the Midwest, but it's country as fuck with a lot of Southern fucking tendencies. Appalachian culture, but it still is not the South. You know what I'm saying? Like, but Tennessee is. So everything under Virginia, yeah, but you got mad different flavors of South, man. Like Virginia, like even to me, like DC is not the South. It's mad motherfuckers from the South that live in DC, but DC is not the South. Arkansas is the South. Alabama is the South. Texas is the South. Texas is also Texas. Texas is also the Southwest. It gets to be three fucking things because it's fucking Texas. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like Florida is a million fucking things. But yo, I'm gonna tell you, between Pensacola and motherfucking Jacksonville, bro, you win the fucking South, bro. It's not Mickey Mouse land. Like it's dead ass. It's swamps and alligators and fucking wild shit, man. Like
Yeah.
this is to make bodies very quick.
When I was in Gainesville, they told me in Florida, the further north you go, the deeper south you get.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. No, for real. North Florida may as well be Alabama. Like culturally, for a lot of fucking reasons, is very, very similar. You know what I'm saying? The Panhandle, the whole redneck Riviera part, like that shit's not Miami, b. Like, don't think that like that's a very different kind of Florida experience. You know what I'm saying? Like when you in Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, all of that, like golf land, beach land, that's there, and even that's the South. But it's something more. It's something different. You know what I'm saying? So
would you say Dallas is the South?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, Dallas is super southern. I mean, again, man, ask yourself, do you have a lot of trouble imagining 150 years ago people shooting each other in the face for slights? Probably you in the South. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just been that culture. And Dallas culture is shoot 'em up culture for sure. It's barbecue culture. It's all of those things. It's still horse culture. But at the same time, Oklahoma is not the South. But it's got a lot of southern tendencies. You know what I'm saying?
Houston, would you say it's Houston the South?
Oh, absolutely. Houston is the Black South. You know what I'm saying? Like Houston has almost the closest city you could compare to Houston would be like New Orleans, bro. And then like with Katrina, you had a whole lot of swap over too. You know what I'm saying? Think about what Houston rap is. It's rap a lot. It's Jay Prince, it's Scarface, it's all of them cats. You know what I'm saying? It's super duper southern. Honor culture, UGK. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Houston definitely the fucking South.
So that's really interesting to me because my experience in Dallas, where I lived for like 2 years, was very much that I was living in like the land of the Alamo. I was living like I know it's a different city. Right. Texas to me, all of it is just like Alamo land. It's like the site of the Mexican American War. It's the site of Rangers and Lynch, and so that's how I like. That's my immediate experience, my immediate thought, my immediate feeling is being close to the Mexican border and all the blood and history that goes with that. And so that's kind of how I experience the state of Texas.
Right.
But I'm sure but Texas also it's also part of the Confederacy. It's also so I mean I completely agree with what you said earlier about the South, Southwest, Texas itself. But it's very interesting because while I see what you're talking about, that's not what I felt while I was there. So it was kind of
Yeah.
got more
Texas is
into
a lot of things, man. Texas
yeah.
is a lot of things all at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like even like when you're talking about it, even though there are significant portions of Black people and Latinx people that live in Dallas, to me, Texas represents kind of a white Southern aesthetic, right? Whereas Houston is much more of a Black Southern aesthetic, and those things exist at the same time, but it's different worlds. Like New Orleans is like that. Like there's a Black New Orleans thing that's happening, but at the same time it's very connected to like French Southern thing. But meanwhile, you could be like 30 minutes out of New Orleans, you know what I'm saying? And it's nothing but kind of like Cajun Southern, right? Very few Black people, that you find in those parts, you know what I'm saying? But it's still super South. Culture is very rich in the South because for so long all of those cultures were separated, and so like now it's like when you take the milk and the fat and you shake it the fuck up, that's the South. It's technically one drink, but it's a lot of different flavors.
All right, all right. So yeah, so the question I wanted to get to, I don't know how I get there from there, but I just remember earlier we were talking. Um, Tell us a little about the watering hole. The tell our audience a little about the watering hole, the rider retreat.
I love the watering hole, man. It's one of my favorite Southern traditions, right? So, like, the watering hole is a writing retreat that exists for people of color, geared primarily towards Southern writers, because especially Black Southern writers in the literary tradition have been considered canonically less than, right? We're seen as less educated on a mainstream level. Our stories are more based upon a specific Black aesthetic, which is seen as less than literary. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a little bit. It's seen as something off, right? Like I remember going to PSI, right? The great democratic medium of fucking slam, and when like Slam Charlotte would start winning, when Slam New Orleans would start winning, they'd be like, "Oh, these are not great writers. They just sing, they just dance," which again is code, it's anti-Black code. You know what I'm saying? So like it's hard sometimes for Southern writers to get distinction. And so the watering hole is a retreat that specifically endears people of color from the South to come there to write, to tell our stories. I love it, man. Through the watering hole, that's how I met like Nikki Finney, who is a National Book Award winner. You know what I'm saying? Patricia Smith has been there. Dinesh has been there. One of my mentors, Frank X. Walker, has lectured there. Randall Horton. So like, it's so many of the powerful Black poets, you know what I'm saying, in the game, people of color in the game, especially that have Southern roots. You know what I'm saying? Jericho Brown has been there several times, and it's a place where we don't have to put on airs, as we say down the South. We can kick back, do very Southern traditions about poetry, kick it. We're off in a little reserve, and it's super dope. It's normally at a state park. So like you can do all of those kind of things. There'll be people out there reading poems by campfires. In the night, everybody's writing every day, sharing new stories, new approaches to poetry. And it's just something that you're not gonna. It's not something that you're gonna get everywhere else, right? Even though poets from other areas are accepted, they're brought into a very Southern space, and they're getting to see the Southern literary traditions, from a way that they normally wouldn't. I mean, look, if you're Faulkner and you're Southern, yeah, it's great. But like, if you're a person of color down South, they just assume that something about our writing is going to be a little bit off, and so the watering hole really pushes back against that in a hard way. I fuck with them heavy, man. I really love them.
All right. Speaking of airs and the opposite of what you just described, can you describe your experience so far in the MFA program that you're in right now?
All right, so that's the great catch 22 about poetry. Look, those of y'all that know me, man, know I've been in the game for a fucking minute. Literally, I've been writing poems, publishing poems since the 90s. You know what I'm saying? But there's some things that you'll never be able to do without certain advanced degrees. I think the Master in Fine Arts is a great example, right? And there's wonderful things that you will learn in an MFA process. I mean, it's going to give you dedicated time to sit down and read. It's going to give you dedicated time to sit down and write. You know, you're going to have a support system in that, you know, you're going to have the people that came in with you as your cohort, and they're going to be reading your poems. But again, right, when we think about American culture as being like milk with all of these different components, that's what you got to realize. So, like, when you're in the MFA process, unless you're looking at one that's specifically geared towards people of color, you're going to find the polite violence of people that don't understand black literary traditions. You know what I'm saying? We're expected always to know about the great white modernists, you know, Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot, right? But at the same time, it's taken for granted. Really, the only kind of black poets they're gonna know are like, you know what I'm saying? Langston Hughes, you know, Gwendolyn Brooks. These are like the only two black people that ever wrote poems in the past. Maybe Rita Dove in a very adventurous, saucy fucking program, right? But you're not going to be doing like any kind of deep, in-depth study of like black arts movement in most MFA programs. You know, they're not going to treat someone like Abiodun Ayawale from The Last Poets as like important and significant, even though that kind of work was instrumental in where slam came to be, you know, in hip hop, right? But these are people that will absolutely tell you everything, you know, about Bob Dylan and Robert Zimmerman, like why he deserved a Nobel, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, and that's what it is. It's the polite violence of like kind of like the white liberal establishment that really like, man, down south, if you fucking with somebody that don't really fuck with people of color, they gonna look you in the face and be like, yo, fuck you. And like y'all can have a peace because you acknowledge right now, I'm not fucking with you, you not fucking with me, step, right? But white liberal violence is very different because they've been socialized to kind of see themselves as the goody. You know what I'm saying? So they can't believe that they're not racially sensitive or that there are gaps in the black authors that they read. You know, to them it's just like, well, these are the canon, you understand? These are the best of the best without ever interrogating who got to pick the canon and why they're there. You know, why those poets are so revered in culture outside of black culture. Which is not to say that black culture doesn't revere these artists. We do, you know, but it's just very different, man. And that is what it is for 3 fucking years, man. I remember, I was putting together my thesis and having to explain to my thesis advisor what a hood youngin is. You know what I'm saying? Like who Papa Legba is. And these are like core cultures, to, especially like Southern black culture, right? But being a dude that came up in hood shit with like that kind of reality, and you know, and to them it's like, we spelled this word wrong. It's like, no, actually, I'm using, you know what I'm saying, black lexicon. I'm using like, if I was in there, you know what I'm saying, writing Tolkien's Elvish, like they'd be absolutely amazed. You know what I'm saying? If I was writing poems in Lithuanian, they'd be absolutely amazed, mixing it up with my English. But I use black lexicon and they don't give it the respect of like, wow, this is a whole nother language that exists within this language that we understand. And they're repurposing and rebranding, which gives all of these words, all of these lines, all of these poems so much more versatility, so many more additional reads. You know what I'm saying? And so like but to them it's easier just to see like, well, you made a mistake. It's like, and that's what that shit is for 3 fucking years. You know what I'm saying? Like, is the MFA a useful degree? Absolutely, sure. But is there a fucking fuck ton of white violence associated with getting a fucking master's degree in poetry? Hell fucking yes.
Yeah. I mean, I hear this story over and over and over again. People in MFA programs, just like feedback they always get is to somehow make it more obvious that, it's like you have a conversation between person A and person B, just like, hey, what's up? Oh, I'm tired. I didn't get enough sleep last night. And they're like, but how do we know they're black? Like that's like,
Yeah, yeah,
they want
yeah.
like, I don't know what they want, but they want at all minutes to be to understand that they're peeking into a world not their own or something like that. And you can move the demographics. They have that same kind of experience. It seems like MFA programs seem to be one of the most racist areas of American life. They really, really,
Under the guise of trying to teach you how to write for the mainstream, right, without ever
yeah,
decontextualizing what that means, they're always assuming you're writing specifically for white consumption, for white gaze. And if they don't get it, then it can't be good. They can't concede that there are other ways or other audiences that could be your primary audience. And so I feel like that's the primary fallacy that you working with. Like, you know, and so that's exactly where you get with that, man. They want to see a certain kind of poem. They want to see a certain kind of delivery. And yeah, even certain literary techniques, right? Like rhyme is considered kind of low poetry. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's a big component of black culture, hip hop culture, like cipher culture, like it's a lot of rhyme that happens with that because like it's saucy shit. It's talking spicy language. It's kind of part of black culture,
yeah,
But in the literary world that is created by this MFA, imagery is granted far higher value as far as like aesthetical genius and being able to speak without words, showing without telling. But that only happens when every aspect of your culture goes without saying.
yeah. It requires no explanation. I mean, like, yeah, it's you see it time and time again. It's horrible. I mean, all you do is giving insights into the dimensions of this horror. I
Man,
mean, yeah. But I mean, get the degree and with that, what's the plan? What's you get the MFA? What's
I mean, look, I wouldn't be opposed to being a Professor Moman somewhere. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Still, but I mean, the most important thing to me is to be able to create work, put out work, to be able to be a part of the conversation about what are the stories that we're telling that define our era. You know what I'm saying? But like,
yeah,
making a place for people that are coming from traditions that are more than right what the expectation is. That's what's important to me, making a home for those poets because I didn't have those, and I want to be a part of creating spaces for people to not have to make a voice, right? A place where you can bring your voice and not have to make a stage. That's what's important for me as far as the MFA goes.
yeah. So speaking of creating platforms and avenues for people to have their voice heard, can you talk a little bit about the podcast Enter the Matrix?
Yo. So what I'm saying, my big homie, Drew Law he had been at me for a while, yo. Like, yo, bro, we need to put together a podcast. I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, you're right, man. We need to do it, man. We need to do it. And it's so ironic because you brought up Georgetown, and he's like, all right, bro, meet me at Georgetown, and we're gonna chop it up. So we went to this spot that's kind of like an open market. It's fucking super gorgeous, and bougie ass poets. We sat down and had some custom ice sodas. And he's like, all right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna call it Exit the Matrix, and we're gonna talk about all of like the geopolitics. We're gonna talk about culture. We're gonna talk about what's happening in music and how all this shit ties together. You know what I'm saying? Because like you got time to go out and read Audre Lorde, and I got time to go out and read Marx, but like regular people just don't. You know what I'm saying? And like, how can we? The saying has been out for a long ass time. If it's not accessible, it's not revolutionary. It's not radical. And so we go out there and we do that work. We do all that decontextualization, and then we bring it and connect it, to people that know that you don't necessarily want to go to where like that's the one thing that I hate about living in this era of propaganda, right? People can say shit that's true for the most untrue reasons. We got a fucking Cheeto. They'll go out and talk about the fake
Yeah,
news media, and it's like, man, this
yeah,
shit is fake. But all of that shit is fake. Like, not just the shit you like is fake. Like, all that shit is fake. And so
Yeah,
like it
you
for
got
us to be able to go out there and make a fucking avenue to bring that knowledge to everybody that might ordinarily not get it, you know.
yeah. I would say you got Biden and Trump talk about each other's sons.
Oh man, oh my god. What it's like it's a nepotism battle royal, except that it's not really beef because we can't let either one of these fine upstanding lads ever possibly face real danger. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. It's true. Don't let this presidential race get in the way of white supremacy or white supremacist bonds, brother.
You know what I'm
Uh,
saying?
no, yeah. Did you see actually? Donald Trump Jr. challenged Hunter Biden to a debate as to who has benefited most from their fathers.
Bro, we lived in such a wild last time. I thought that shit was satire. I seen it, but I thought that shit was satire, bro. I really don't know how the motherfuckers. Hey, God bless all the motherfuckers writing shit at the Onion right now, because there's never been a more trying time for you guys. I see you motherfuckers. I salute y'all. I honor you. You know what I'm saying? Because this shit is so outlandish. Yo, it's like how God is like, y'all happy we finished this shit when we did. Because even
Yeah,
the vibe we coming up with pales in comparison to the real life shit that's happening right now.
yeah, yeah. I think what's his name? Andy was Andy Borowitz with New York or something like that. I think he gave up. Like I haven't seen his stuff anymore. um,
Man.
well, speaking of politics, let's get into the presidential race. So Bernie Sanders recently dropped out. You've been a big critic of. That's kind of it's weird when I'm doing these little interviews. I try to like ruin
Racist
myself.
grandpa! Oh, racist grandpa!
You've been a big critic.
Sheepdog! Mr. Sheepdog!
Yeah, you've been a big critic of Bernie Sanders. Well, speak to that. What's your issue with with the with Burner?
I mean, this is what
Yeah,
look. When we talk about what radical politics is, I'm always afraid of any one person that says, only through me shall change come. Because those are messiah figures. Those are cult of personality people. What's important to me is your fucking platform. You know what I'm saying? What is your platform? What do you represent? What do you exist to bring about? Right? Like, way less than follow me and through me you shall be saved. And the cult of Bernie was exactly that. It's like, what the fuck do you mean, right? Y'all go to these speeches and you hear him talk, but then you don't even analyze what his actual voting record is. He's out there campaigning like I'm for the Green New Deal. Okay, so first off, the Democrats took that whole platform from the Green Party, stripped that shit down, made it as safe and as palatable as fuck. And then only the House of Representatives ran with that shit. Motherfuckers like AOC and the Gang of Four. But like when it came to the Senate, Bernie didn't even vote for that shit. Bernie let that shit go right through. Not a single vote went for the fucking the Green New Deal package that came through the Senate. And it's like he up in speeches and motherfuckers are like, Bernie's gonna bring about solar panels. I'm like, yo, what based on this motherfucker's actual voting record makes you believe this is gonna happen? Bernie is an ally for black people. When it's essay after essay about how black politicians and black activists in Vermont couldn't even get fucking audiences with this dude. Any person running on a leftist platform that claims to be a social democrat that hasn't reached the part of understanding how ratio politics have to come into any socioeconomic plans, think about who has been made, who's been redlined against, right? Black people, Latinx people, right? Where we're told literally there are 30% of black people in this neighborhood. The bank won't even give you a fucking loan to move here. You can't treat that shit with just $15 a fucking hour. Which again, even that's a decade old. Like, bro, you could not get a fucking house in DC at $15 an hour at 40 hours a fucking week. And they never give you 40 fucking hours. So like even the shit he's fighting for is like, bro, that shit would have been a good idea maybe a decade ago. But we got to take this shit further than even you going, and you the furthest left the Democrats ever gonna let you be. But let's say he really was everything that everybody was talking about. Let's go back to 2016, right? When he's seen that he's been clearly fucked by the Democratic Party. I mean, literally, he took him to court, and in court, the Democratic Party of America says we're a fucking company, and we don't have to do like the primaries are a suggestion, but as a corporation, we can vote the way we want to vote, and we're not obligated to do any of that. That was in a fucking court that the Democrats came out and said this shit. And this motherfucker runs again with the Democrats in 2020 and then want to cry all fucking skint me and shit when the same shit happens, the same fuck shit happens. Like for me, I came up in the hood with real ones. When you get fucking slighted, you step the fuck off. You don't come back and let them people fuck you over again. But never mind the fact in 2016, Jill Stein, for all the people that talk shit about her, was willing to step off her fucking platform and let Uncle fucking racist grandpa take over the green fucking ticket. That's a matter, that's a known fucking fact that it was out there. The most radical thing you could do in this policy, in this era of policy, maybe is get a third party to a 5% block so that they can get some matching federal funds. That's something that real life Bernie Sanders could have done that would have made a real radical impact on the nature of American politics. But he couldn't win that, right? So it's not about me. Like, if I can't be the fucking golden savior for the shit, fuck that. I'm going to take my ball and go home. People like that, it's hard to get that hard to. They get that real with. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, it was never going to be Bernie because and again, right? If we can sit there and talk about all this intersectionality all fucking day long and shit, how in the fuck are you going to tell me a septuagenarian, 70-plus-year-old white guy, cishet white guy, is going to be the face of intersectionality in America? Nah, you can be part of the conversation, bro, but we passed the era where you get to be the voice that controls the language. And if you that fucking woke, you supposed to know that shit already. So it's the paradox of woke. If you're that woke, you should know you can't be the one that be the leader, but you should still want to be part of the fucking solution and platform. Someone like Bernie should have been grooming these fucking new left-wing, quote-unquote left-wing Democrats, helping get them in a position to be able to get past all the fuck shit he had to go through if he was the dude that he claimed he was, man. But he never did any of that shit. So either you not woke enough or you a sheepdog. Or you a sheepdog. Fuck Bernie Panders.
Bernie Panders. Oh man. All right. So so moving outside. I mean, I personally think. I mean, I don't want to editorialize too much, but I personally think that there's no hope doing anything within the Democratic Party. Got to move outside of it. Got to build outside of it. Build outside of either of these parties that are built by Wall Street and by the munitions industries. You know, what I mean, the weapons industries. But speaking of which, you're going to be hosting a conversation soon, talking about the ongoing significance of the Malcolm X speech, "The Ballot or the Bullet," right?
Ballot or the Bullet, yeah. So like 60 years ago, you know what I'm saying, Malcolm X gave a speech called "The Ballot or the Bullet," and I think it's one of the most relevant conversations from the civil rights generation. You know what I'm saying, in the 60s, that I think it's under respected. And so what we're going to do in Exit the Matrix podcast, we're going to reach out to some of the foremost leftist poets in the nation and just let everybody have a little panel conversation about whether or not we feel like there's even still relevance to what he said or how it could be better for this day and age. What did he get absolutely right? What did he not get right? You know, and just let everybody have conversation about that. I think it could be a very useful conversation because a lot of the logjam we're seeing as far as leftism and the quote unquote leftism in the democratic socialism that we're seeing from these Democrats, Malcolm X predicted this shit 60 years ago, you know?
Yeah. So who are some of the poets that you have gathered so far for this event?
Right. So of course we got you, big homie. Looking forward to getting a great brown perspective on that from the West Coast. You know what I'm saying? I have Michael Questmore, who is a phenomenal poet out in New Orleans. Did a lot of work with the Shut 'Em Down campaign, which went through, uprooting all of these Confederate fucking statues all throughout the South. I'm gonna be there. Amin Drulaw is gonna be there. A.M. Pressman, who is an extraordinary poet. And so, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to having a conversation because we're covering a lot of different identities that will have perspective from the left. And I think that's just something we don't get to see a lot of, you know?
Yeah, no, it's really great that you're gathering people from, not just different ethnicities and whatnot, but like different regions of the country. I mean, it's really to really look at this national question. That's phenomenal. So what do you think that for those who might not be familiar listening right now, what do you think are some of the significant takeaways from the Malcolm X speech, the Ballot or the Bullet?
So what he really understood was the demographic shift that was beginning to happen, right? Like in the 60s and the 50s, pretty much the white vote controlled everything. And everything about American politics is finding factions. It's factionalism. Can I get my tribe to have a bigger group than your tribe? And then we will set the policy. And this is trickled down all the way to the Democrats and the Republicans, right? But I think there are perspectives that go beyond the politics of mainstream democratic values and structures, right? Same thing with Republicans. I care about things that are not part of those platforms at all and that are specifically relevant to my demographic. For example, in a capitalist framework, right, where if they don't want us to go and be commies, they have to be able to make a playing field where everybody can come in and bring value to it, right? So if we look at capitalism as okay, the game of Monopoly, right? You go around the board, you collect everything, and whoever collects the most wins. That's capitalism. When we're looking at the experiment that's America, only white Americans could go around the board and collect, right? If you were not a white American and a white position to be able to counteract some of the systemic things that went through. These are politics that are very particular to oppressed people, but specifically Black Americans, specifically Native, Indigenous Americans, specifically Latinx people, right? When we're looking at, additionally, I don't have to tell you as a Latinx person, when we're talking about the politics of right of return in places like Israel, where like for 2,000 years, it's been transferring back and forth, but people saying, I have an intrinsic right to return to the land of my ancestors, right? Those politics then become a huge part, I think, of Latinx conversations about American politics because, as you know better than anyone else, California was Mexico, Arizona was Mexico, New Mexico was Mexico, Texas was Mexico. And if
Yeah,
this is the land of my ancestors, then we believe in the politics of a right to return, then Latinx people have an inherent reason to be in that land of their homelands, of their ancestors forever. Like you can't believe it both ways. And there's no Democrat that believes that. There's no Republican that believes that, right? And so it's only through creating new coalitions where we're thinking about the intersectional layers of oppression where everybody is considering how we can work together to create a more equitable United States of America. These are things that Democrats are not interested in. These are not things that Republicans are interested in. And only as cohesive coalitions that are coming into new parties, right, can we begin to work on what is our foundational inherent root politics.
yeah, yeah. It's all about. I mean, the whole of the Western Hemisphere is really a series of a question of enslavement and displacement and genocide and theft and really the destruction of the destruction of the way history was going, the way things were moving for two different continents. I mean, this is the Western
Right.
Hemisphere and Africa. I mean, that's what this
Right.
whole thing's built on. I mean, So, we have some questions from the audience.
All right.
We have some statements here that are just in general approval. But we have a question here from comes from one of the writers of that great website, De La Jaguar. Comes from my sweetie Karina.
Yeah, yeah.
And Karina asks, hi Amoja, was Malcolm telling us that liberation will not come at the ballot box?
He's saying that there are strategies that the ballot box can utilize, right? But they're way beyond the simple politics of vote Democrat or vote Republican. He's saying it's ironic that the title of it is the ballot or the bullet because he's offering more than a binary, right? He's saying from the ballot, these are particular strategies that we can use to kind of reach a less oppressive coalition that will make a better America, right? Or we could do this the other way. Like that's the shit you gotta love about Malcolm, man. And this is why, like, he's, you got photos of Malcolm all, dapped up with Che, dapped up with Mandela, all around the world, because they're thinking about this from a global perspective. Like, if I believe in socialism, I believe in socialism everywhere. And how can my heart not fucking melt for like what's happening to the people of Venezuela when they're like, yo, we trying to make this thing happen, and countries away from Venezuela are like, yo, we will not let this fucking thing happen, right? It's impossible to not do that, right? It takes you beyond just the basic tribalism of like what it means to be an American. I think Malcolm really thought about this way in advance. And though he didn't create this term intersectionality that will come later with Dr. Crenshaw, he's laying some groundwork that's really showing the ways that other oppressed minorities can coalesce and create points of communion between us. So that's I think a very very quick breakdown of what Malcolm I think was trying to reach in that speech. But it's on YouTube. You can Google it. Anybody that's not aware of that, please go out there and get this knowledge. You know what I'm saying? I am not a capitalist. I'm not trying to like sell you this speech. It's already out there for free, man. Get yourself educated. Don't believe me? Listen to Malcolm. He'll tell you what he meant way better than I ever could.
So we got another question from Gilbert Belamontes. He says, Cubo, will racism ever end in politics?
Of course not. I mean, politics is something about tribalism, right? And it's no section of the world has like mastered getting rid of racism, especially anti-black racism. It's something that's a global phenomenon. So I think our culture would have to change before the culture of politics can change, because politics reflects the culture, you know? It's just like, again, in slam, think about that, where you got to go out and get judged by random people, right? In a culture where like you're not the mainstream culture, their values are not your values, artistically or aesthetically. Politics are the exact same way. So long answer, TLDR, no. Racism will always be part of politics.
All right. So where can people find what you're up to, and some of the material you're getting ready to do? Well, actually, before we get into that, talk about your upcoming manuscript. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so something I'm playing with. You know what I'm saying? I have it mostly where I want it to be. It's called Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins. And it's a Gothic noir, which is a style of poetry I'm playing with. A couple of the poems that I read from y'all earlier were those. And it really is just kind of, again, a deconstructing of what American culture looks like applied from the Black arts kind of ideology and mind point. You know what I'm saying? What this looks like, from the eyes of a little Black boy who grew up in the South. You know what I'm saying? Living in the hood. Because we're part of America, but we're within and without at the same time. And so our lens is always just a little bit different. That's the number one thing that I'm working on right now. Really trying to find a good home for that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I have it mostly where I want it to be. Out here still organizing with Exit the Matrix, trying to be the best human being that I can be. Just came off a wonderful Passover. You know what I'm saying? And just, sequestering, writing poems and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this has been such a rich dialogue. We're really grateful to. I'm really grateful to have had you come on and talk about this. For those who don't know, Amoja is really, he's one of the really foundational people in the slam scene, particularly in the South. I mean, without you, there's many things that would not have happened. So, the slam community owes you a debt of gratitude. I owe you a debt of gratitude for coming on right now. He let me stay on his couch when I was in DC.
Yo, ice cream game. Ice cream game.
Amazing. I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared for that.
Yo, ask yourself, when's the last time you just decided to go out and make yourself the best possible Sunday you could? Ask yourself, what the fuck do I like on ice cream, right? Because we go out there and we do the hard work. We read all of this critical, dialogue. We go out there and we try to help people get closer to radical politics and this growth that's needed for the community. But what are you doing for yourself, right? When's the last time you went home and made yourself a fucking Sunday with everything that you love?
What ice creams you got in your freezer right now?
Oh man, it's a sad state, boy. I be flexing. So I
Well,
have
quarantine. I mean, shit, I mean that's gonna suffer, right? The ice cream collection is gonna suffer.
and woo. But no, I have let's see. So I have Haagen Dazs Black Cherry.
Mm.
I have a local ice cream maker, cake batter funfetti. I have Haagen Dazs caramel cone. I have Ben and Jerry's. What is it? It's chocolate therapy. That's what's in the freezer right now. What?
Yeah, yeah,
Fat boy, little fat boy privileges. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, man. No, that salted caramel was it was that was I've never before or since. That was pretty astounding. That was pretty
I
amazing.
reject the revolution without ice cream, B. Let them eat cake, but I mean, give me my steaks too. But I'm still gonna take your cake and your castle. Fuck you. Cake is delicious. You can't make me not like it, you bougie person. Yeah,
So somebody gave a shout out to Bus Boys and Poets. Can you talk a little bit about the Bus Boys and Poets and the DC poetry scene in general?
man. I mean, mostly the homie Pages, my Tim runs it. Extraordinary, brilliant fucking guy. Um, Cameroonian poet. You know what I'm saying? Been down in the DMV for really pretty much his whole life. And what I love about it is, so like you have all of these different places, right? Busboys and poets for all of the good and the bad that comes with the ownership, right? Which is a whole nother conversation. What you have to love about them is they have locations all around the city, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. You know what I'm saying? And more than just the parts that people would consider places where a tourist might come to DC. It's really indicative of the town, and all the neighborhoods are represented well. Every day of the week, you could go there and a different poetry event is happening. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, that's a hell of a thing, man. In a lot of places where, like in Little Rock, the best situation I ever got was we partnered with the Arkansas Art Center, which was a fucking incredible partner, and they did so much for us, and they gave us money and underwrite it, and it's a hell of a thing to be able to do poetry in a place where Diego, you know what I'm saying, Rivera's are hanging up, where you know what I'm saying, all you have access to all that Picasso's, but we have one day a month, you know what I'm saying, to come out and really do what we do. Whereas in Bus Boys and Poets, every day of the week, some poetry happening. And even that is not the tale of poetry in DC. If you want to go an hour away from the city, it's still hella shit popping off in Baltimore. Spit That is a legendary poetry thing that happens out here. It's been going on for more than 20 years, which is an open mic. It's so many of the foundational deaf poets, you know what I'm saying, that still live out here. But then also like OGs in the literary game, that live out here. And so it's just a hotbed of a lot. It's like for real a melange, in a way that I've never been able to experience as a poet. I mean, it's just very rich, lots of traditions. You got, and then it just being on the East Coast, you get the people that do East Coast poetry that have become part of the scene. Reggie Capico is foundational out here, does a fucking lot of work. So like Bus Boys and Poets, they're just a really big, important part of what we do, and they're a foundational partner that isn't worried about what's going to be making technically the most profitable possible thing to do right now. Like that was the argument I had every time I went to try to sell poetry in a place like Little Rock. It's like it's hard to go to like a place like the River Market in Little Rock and be like, yo, I want to do a poetry show like once a week at least, right? When they could be doing a rock show and make 3 times the fucking money. When they can do a hip hop show and make 3 times the fucking money. And
Yeah.
like Boys and Poets has always been absolutely dedicated to creating a space for specifically poetry to be broadcasted. And if nothing else, man, you have to give up praise for that everywhere, because a lot of places in the country that don't even have something quite that popping.
Yeah, yeah. Curious. I'm just like curious. What is the relationship between Bus Boys and Poets and Split This Rock? Was there?
But they're different organizations, right? Busboys and Poets is a for-profit restaurant slash entertainment space. They do a show with Split This Rock. I think it's called Sunday Kind of Love, which is kind of like their monthly kind of literary reading, and poets come from all over the country to do that. But Split This Rock is its own organization. They're a nonprofit that is associated with social justice. And you know they do so they do their own different things. They're very different organizations, but they are working in collaboration with each other because again, you know, everything is just elements in DC. Like no one person controls everything. No one organization controls everything. It's remarkably democratic in that way, ironically.
Yeah, in the least democratic city in the.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing hour. Can you and just share plug anything that the people want people to follow you on, projects you want are upcoming, stuff from the past, whatever it is. The
You
floor
know,
is.
everybody keep your eyes out, you know what I'm saying, for again, fables, foibles, and other American sins that will be coming to a bookstore near you soon. Um, Definitely check out exitthematrixpodcast.com. Follow us on any of the places where you might get your podcast and get up on it, man. Gang, gang, love. We trying to build coalitions and radically counteract, you know, neoliberal damage, you know, neoconservative damage, fascist damage. We trying to put together something that ain't been done before, and can none of us do it without all of us doing it. So love.
Uh, Thank you for all that you do, and we'll be speaking again soon.
All right, man. Be well.